For this next section, we're going to discuss dividing whole numbers. And for topic one, we're just going to kind of get a feel for what division is. So by definition, division is the process of finding out how many times one number called the divisor can be subtracted from another number called the dividend until nothing remains or the remainder is smaller than the divisor. So this can feel like a mouthful because we're dealing with two numbers and they sort of sound the same. I know divisor and dividend don't literally sound the same, but they both start with that div sound. Okay. So basically, you're taking one number called the dividend and you're subtracting from it the same number over and over and over and over. That number that you're subtracting is called the divisor. So we want to know how many times can that divisor be subtracted from the dividend until we have nothing left, or we have one little group that's smaller than the divisor. Okay. Another way to think of this is we have this one big group and we want to break it down into equal size groups. Okay. So the dividend is the original group and the divisor tells us how many groups of equal size we want. And then the result is the size of each of those groups. Okay. So a little bit further, let's talk about each of these parts to division. So first, the divisor is the number by which you are dividing. Okay. So if you're looking at taking, say, 12, I like to use 12. So if we take the number 12 and we were to divide it by 4, that tells me I want 4 groups of equal size. 4 is the divisor. 12, the number you're dividing, is the dividend. Okay. The quotient is the result from division. So I know that 12 divided by 4 is 3. So that says, hey, I'm going to take 12. I want to break it into 4 groups of equal size. The size of those groups is 3. Okay. And then sometimes when you do division, for example, let's say we did 13 divided by 4. Well, I know that 4 will go into 13 3 whole times. So that tells me I can get 4 groups of size 3, but I'm going to have 1 left over. So that tells me I would have a remainder of 1. So the remainder is what is left after division if the dividend is not evenly divisible by the divisor. Okay. So when you're talking about division, it's sometimes easy to get lost in the divi words, the divisor, division, dividend. Okay. They all sort of sound the same. So just really understand you're taking this one big number, you're breaking it into equal size groups. The number of groups you want is the divisor. The number you're starting with is the dividend. And the quotient is the size of the equal groups that you have at the end. Okay. Now, here's a really cool thing. We talked about this with subtraction, and it comes up again with division. When you're dealing with math, you can have these things called inverse operations. So inverse operations are operations that essentially undo each other. And we found that addition and subtraction undo each other. So when we're subtracting, we can very easily check our answer by using addition. The same thing is true with multiplication and division. Multiplication and division will undo each other. So when you're multiplying, you can check your work with division. When you're dividing, you can check your work with multiplication. So if we wanted to check our work with multiplication, we would take the quotient, multiply it by the divisor, and then if there's a remainder, you'd have to add that. So multiply your quotient and your divisor, add a remainder if there is one, and that should give you the dividend back. And we'll look at that in just a moment. Okay. So for example 1, it just says label each part of the problem. So for part A, we have 465 divided by 15 equals 31. That means we're taking 465 and we want 15 equal size groups out of that. What is the size of the group? Well, the size of the group is 31. So in this case, the dividend is the number that's being divided and broken into equal size groups. So the dividend here would be 465. The divisor is what you're dividing by. So that's going to be 15. We want 15 equal size groups out of 465. The quotient is the number of complete groups that you can get out of the dividend. So the quotient here would be 31. If we couldn't divide 465 evenly by 15, if there was something left over, there were these little odds and ends left over that didn't make a full group, that would be the remainder. In this case, we don't have a remainder. So I'm just going to say not applicable. Okay. Now for part B, we have 27 divided by 4 equals 6. And then we have this capital R3. This R3 right here represents the remainder. So I have 26. I want to break it into 4 equal size groups. That tells me each group is going to have 6 in it, but then I'm going to have these 3 little leftover pieces that aren't big enough to form a whole group. Okay. So the dividend here is 27. The divisor is 4. the quotient is 6, and then the remainder is 3. So I have 27. I want to break it into 4 equal size groups of size 6. Unfortunately, there's going to be 3 little odds and ends left over. Okay, so those are the parts to definition. Those are the parts to division. Make sure you understand the definitions, especially dividend and divisor. They're easy to get confused. All right, example 2 says list 3 ways to write 42 divided by 7 equals 6. There are 3 different ways that you can see division represented in a math class. So the first is kind of like the old school way. So we could say, okay, we have 42. We're going to use this division symbol. 7 and then equals 6. So that's kind of the traditional way that you might be familiar with writing division. But there are 2 other ways. You can represent division by using fractions. Okay, so we haven't really talked about fractions yet, but basically with a fraction, there's a top number and a bottom number. The top number is called the numerator. That's always going to be your dividend. The denominator, that's the bottom number, that's always going to be your divisor. So you can always do dividend divided by divisor. So for this one, we would have 42 divided by 7 and then just equals whatever your quotient is. Okay. There's also a setup that's called long division, and that's when people think of division, they're like, oh my gosh, I hate division. It's long division. Don't hate it. It's not so bad. We'll go through it very slowly, but you can have the dividend inside this little house. I don't know what else to call this. It was always called a little house when I was a kid. And then we have the divisor on the outside. So we could say 42 divided by 7, and then you put the quotient on top. So those are 3 different ways that we can represent division. You will see part A and B frequently. You'll see those a lot, okay? As you move through your life, you'll tend to see B more, especially once we get into algebra, you'll see the B setup much more. But then C, the setup where we do long division, that's how you that's kind of the best way to work out division. So you don't see it presented to you like part C as frequently, but you'll use part C the most, okay? All right, example 3, we're going to verify each solution by multiplying. Remember earlier I told you that multiplication can be used to check a division problem. So multiplication and division, they're inverse operations, they undo each other. So essentially what you want to do is you want to take your divisor, multiply it by your quotient, add a remainder if you have one, and that result should equal the dividend. Okay, so let's try it out. So we have 39 divided by 9, or wait, 36, excuse me, 36 divided by 9 is 4. So what we would want to do is we would want to take the divisor and the quotient, multiply those, there's no remainder, so there's nothing to add, and it just so happens that 9 times 4 is 36. So we could say everything really does check out here. Okay, now let's look at part B. So we have 58 divided by 8 equals 7, but then we have a remainder of 2. So what we want to do is take 8 times 7, we want to add 2, and our goal is to make sure that equals 58. Okay, so let's see, 8 times 7 is 56. So at this point, you've got a multiplication table, so use your multiplication table. So 8 times 7 is 56. 56 plus 2 is 58. So we can say that everything does check out here. So the purpose of this video is to understand the definitions and the parts of division, to understand different ways to write division, and to remind ourselves that division and multiplication will undo each other, and we can use that to our advantage.